entirely where this conversation may end up going.
Exactly. Now, I was hoping that publishing actually is an inspiration for the rest of the world.
Yes, yeah, it's funny. Like as much as I believe in like open collaboration and whatnot, there is just an issue that I am just a bit shy and like
Yeah.
being visible on the internet, like especially with one's face, is just sort of it's kind of a nerve wracking prospect. But at the same time, that is just something I have to get over. You know.
Yeah. Do you are you willing to work on that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially, I mean, the expansion of things. Video media is just a critical tool
Yeah.
for anything right now.
Right, because you did mention you did mention that you'd like to do some outreach in terms of no media. What did you say about media?
Well,
Oh,
video media, yeah. Well, you have to always have something of a funnel on the internet,
mhm.
and video media is generally the most effective sort of top funnel. Like that's where you can get the broadest outreach. It's where you're going to reach the most people.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you have to sort of. It might not be things like YouTube. There's a certain level of optimization that you have to have that can kind of push out certain values that you're trying to. It's kind of hard to get into the meat and potatoes of things
Mhm.
and be successful on YouTube. So you kind of have this funnel where, like, something like, say, a newsletter that people can opt into. That's sort of, you're going to have definitely less people there, but you're going to have a higher quality of person there. They're going to be more, you can use that in different ways.
Yeah, yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that, like what I do on YouTube is, it doesn't matter who's on. It's like I don't kind of pay attention to, okay, here's all the metrics of proper performance. I just post it.
Mm-hmm.
This is an
Mm-hmm.
extension of who I am and stuff like that. So yeah, I noticed like since we started, for example, um, we were, I guess, one of the early people on the internet, including YouTube, and nobody had the kind of stuff that goes on today where you got the
Oh,
proper
yes.
intro screen and all that, and it was much more raw at that time. And I see it
Mm-hmm.
over the years just changing. That we're old school, we're outdated. We don't really do that so much, but understandably of course, for publicity purposes, like yeah, if you want to streamline up, you know, or get a nice platform that a lot of people follow. But yeah, but like you say, it's like the quality. We want to make sure that the substance is there. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very hard to have the substance and perform in these algorithms.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. With that, yeah, exactly. It brings up thoughts like, man, right now it's difficult to recruit because I've been pretty much down Periscope for a couple of years, finishing the house productization, like preparing all the curriculum and materials
Mhm.
for what's happening next, which is now. And I noticed over the 2 years, it's like we're starting from zero on YouTube and Facebook. It's
Yes.
insane, just
Yeah.
completely throttled. You know?
Yeah, they've completely changed from like your subscriptions being important to the curation of your feed to just their general algorithm. And like dormant channels, it's like they don't exist. You have to warm things back up for quite a while.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So that's the issue we're dealing with right now. As we get up I mean, we're working on a proper website and all that, and the outreach and all kinds of po- job posts and all that. So that's what we're working on. But we can do that well, I think, because um, I actually look forward to it. Because right now it's like I was somewhat surprised that with the recruiting. Oh yeah, we'll get a lot of people. We typically got enough subscribers to any of our programs, but right now, different audience, so it's the younger people, and we
Mhm.
got completely throttled from the inactivity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was surprised to see, like, I was looking through your YouTube and whatnot, and just seeing, like, the change in views over time. And, like, there was that period of dormancy, and afterwards, it was, things are not getting traction.
tell me more about that. What specifically did you see? Like,
How do you mean exactly?
um, no, like any statistics, like you saw more views. Can you
Well,
tell
I
me
mean,
more?
there's that period where, I forgot exactly how many videos you publish,
Uh-huh.
but there's that period where it's like, the videos are published 2 years ago, and then they're more recent. And then you can organize people's YouTube by like the videos that are getting the most views. And
Mm-hmm.
for yours, most of them are the earlier videos, like about like informational things about welding and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But then like these recent videos, they're just barely getting pushed out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, interesting on that, but we're doing what we can. We want to get those people all signed up. That's the thing. You are the first, actually the first applicant. Did a bunch of push out, even promoted some things, but so far we got to do a better job. We're working on it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna have to do it. So that's the current state. Where do we start? Did you have any specific questions you want to start with, or?
No, nothing. Nothing sort of immediately comes up.
I did want to cover certain things like the. First of all, I mean, congratulations on so far. I mean, really good so far.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
impressed with the answers, that you're thoughtful, and you're definitely, I perceive you're definitely a thinker. You've thought about the issues. Tell me more about so you decided not to go to college at all.
Yes.
Mental pressure, or how did you know that?
Yes, there was definitely, the decision definitely came to the chagrin of a lot of the people around me, but it just, a lot of my peers, like my friends and whatnot, they entirely made their decision to go to college based off of things like parental pressure, and I just, that just doesn't seem correct to me. Like, having such a major part of your life being determined, without much thought from yourself, like that, I just don't see that delivering anybody where they want to go. But I just couldn't get over the fact that it really just seems like high school part two. Like, there's, at least unless you're in, an incredibly nice school, you're just not receiving too much of an actual education compared to, maybe 50 years ago. It was a lot smaller of a group that was going to college. And like, the way education works in my mind, when you're kind of doing it at scale, is you really have to be geared towards the average student while making room for, the under average students. That's like how you can produce things at scale with education. And everybody is encouraged to go to college now. And it didn't seem to me to be any sort of step forward of like actually pursuing like a higher education. And it's like a lot of people who I talk to who go to college, it's just like high school part two is sort of what I've perceived it as being. Like, they just sort of go through the motions in the same way they went through the motions in high school. And, it's just, I didn't see that as being worth either the time or money.
How did you arrive at these conclusions? That's, that's good insight. I mean, tell me more about how you found out all about it. That's pretty impressive that you I mean, for example, looking back 50 years, how it used to be. Tell me more about how you got thinking about this.
Well, I had read this book. It's called The 13th Greatest of Centuries. It's all about the 13th century, and mainly sort of the rise of the university. And sort of, like I mentioned, that when I learn about things, I like to learn about them as sort of chronologically as possible.
Yeah.
And so, in considering whether or not to go to college, I was reading about like the beginning of colleges and how they were functioning then. And it's just very clear that the average university was allowing for, much more diversity of thought, that you had much more freedom in your studies, that you weren't really being, like, a big issue in education now is people are like siloed into these very, very narrow fields of knowledge that, there's like just not a lot of connection that's made to other areas. And, it's just, it's just, I really wish it weren't the case, but I couldn't justify the time or money for that. Especially with like the internet. Like, in a lot of ways, I feel as though the internet has kind of displaced college. Like, if the internet were being utilized to its fullest extent, education would look totally different. It would be completely different. It's like, in that sense, in that, like, we've kind of taken away like the practical reasons for university, which is to say that the universities don't really have a monopoly on knowledge anymore. it's only really able to function for its like ritualistic purpose, and that's sort of how people approach it. It's how people go to college, which that's not entirely without value. Um, but I also did see I had an opportunity to get sort of what I viewed as the college experience, just sort of condensed down into 1 year. And then one of my friends, he went out to Montana for college, and they had an extra room. So it was basically like a frat house, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to move out to Montana with us?" I was like, "Sure." So it was. I did kind of have like at least socially the college experience, just sort of crammed down into 1 year and without encountering any debt.
Hmm. And
Yes.
what was your conclusion at that point?
It was fun, but it wasn't sustainable. I had a very good time, but
Yeah,
it was yeah, it's definitely not something that I wanted to,
yeah,
not something that I could have done for a long time, you know.
yeah, exactly. Um, so walking the Appalachian Trail. So
Oh
are
yes,
you
yes.
physically in like pretty good shape? You're an athlete, or tell me more about it.
No, I went from being completely sedentary,
Yeah,
very overweight, to just doing it. I didn't train at all. It was like the first night that I'd ever spent in a tent was the first night out there. Like I just jumped in with both feet, and I lost like I think 35 pounds in the first 2 weeks. I forgot I didn't weigh myself at the beginning, um, so I don't know how much I lost overall, but it was very dramatic. It was a very dramatic change.
wow.
And since then, I haven't been as active as I told myself I ought to be, but it's definitely been a priority that I've kept up with a fair bit. Again, I'd imagined myself like going for runs every single morning, and that hasn't quite happened. But
Yeah,
yeah, I definitely a lot of the reason why I wanted to do it is I felt as though I've lived in my mind my entire life, and I've never been like in my body, and I needed to do that. I felt that like I was 24 at the time. It's like okay, I kind of need to take care of myself. Like I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be horribly unhealthy one day. I need to fix this. And I figured one such dramatic change that I could do would be to do endurance exercise every single day for 6.5 months. And it worked.
so that was only a year ago.
Yes, yeah, that was last year. It was from February to let me see, I'm quite bad with the dates, but it was 6.5 months is how long it took take me to do it.
Well, in February, you started in the South End?
I did, yes. I started in Georgia and went up to Maine.
Because if you started in Maine in February, that would have been pretty cold there.
Yeah, so it's still pretty cold in Georgia. It's actually more people die of hypothermia in Georgia and South Carolina than anywhere else in the country, just because you don't really expect it. A lot of people are not prepared.
Oh, wow. No
Yeah, it
idea.
was funny. I was hiking for a while with this one fella he was like an older veteran type, and he saw these people hiking up the mountain, and they were wearing like cotton shirts and jeans, and he made them turn around. He made them go back to their car. He was like, "It's going to rain tonight, and you are not ready. Like you're putting yourself in serious danger."
Oh,
And
wow.
he like forced them to go back. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a great experience.
How,
That was
how tall are you?
I am 5'8", about
Okay.
quite average.
So, would you consider, I mean, part of the physical thing, like, in terms of doing physical work, I mean, you think you're ready? Like,
Oh
you think you have
yes,
some grit?
yes, yes,
How do you tell?
definitely.
How do you tell if you have grit?
Hmm.
Like,
I
is
guess
there an
it,
experience that shows that you were able? Well, there's the Appalachian
yeah.
Trail.
I feel like you kind of have to. There's a lot of things like it's not going to be falsifiable to oneself. The point at which you could keep going, unless you actually meet that end, like unless you actually reach the point where you're seriously considering quitting and then making the decision to keep going. Like if you're never sort of like actually pushing that boundary with yourself, you just don't know where it is. You know what I mean? There's definitely many times that I had reached that boundary and pushed it further, and then met that further boundary again and had to push it further. Like I broke my ankle near the end, and so I did the last like 150 miles just limping. Like I was like, I was far too close to quit, even though it was like a pretty considerable issue. It's just like no, you just got to keep
Wow.
going.
Did you how'd you take care of the ankle later? Like, did you have to go to the doctor?
It still clicks when I turn it in certain ways, but it's not horribly painful. So I've just kept going.
You didn't go to a doctor at the end?
No. The medical imaging is incredibly expensive. I would like to. One such thing that I would like to open source would be medical imaging technology, and not even like you don't even need it to be huge. Like just something you could stick your hand in. Like say you drop a hammer on something, and before you even to know whether or not you need medical attention, you could just get some imaging done locally.
Would that be X-ray in that case? Yeah, that would be X-ray, right?
Yeah. I mean, X-rays, MRI. I mean, MRI requires a lot more technology, but I think that those ends of technology are, I think, eventually going to be accessible.
There's open source imaging. There's an MRI that just.
Did
you see that one from?
No, I did not. I did not see that.
Polish guy who PhD in Germany. It's amazing. I just found out about it last week when I was looking through all the open hardware. But they have it's like this big, so you can put your head in there.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome. That's awesome.
That is really good. I thought that was major progress.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So.
How is he? Do you know how he's cooling the magnets? Because I know that, like in hospitals, they use liquid helium for the cooling, which is.
I don't know how they're healing the magnets, but I'm gonna talk to him, and I was thinking about that. That's okay. And once again, just like everybody else, this guy's doing amazing work. He's gotten so far, but now he's asking me, okay, well, how do we fund this thing? Like, to get it to a productization? Because, okay, they've got an excellent prototype where they actually got an image of a brain. I mean,
oh, man.
It's amazing.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. If you look up, I actually saw this on wherever I saw it. It might have been on LinkedIn or on possibly Blue Sky or former Twitter. Okay, but let's keep going. Regarding the phase of building the module. Right?
Yes.
Would you be traveling here by car, or how would you do that? If you build that thing, what do you do?
I would be traveling by car. I have my own car, and so I end up having things just in such a way that I could fit them in there. But yeah, I've traveled long distances by car plenty before. I've been quite itinerant since the end of high school, so having a car has been quite necessary. But yes, I would be traveling by car.
Okay. Did you say that you're working at Walmart right now?
I am. Yes, I'm stocking shelves at a Walmart.
How much do you get paid there?
$14 an hour.
So this is an example where it's like you're taking a job just kind of to survive.
Yes.
Your skill set warrants probably. Well, I mean, your interests and ambitions are bigger. But when I saw that, it's like, holy cow! Maybe we should be recruiting at Walmart.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who are underutilizing their potential. There's I really don't think you're going to have an issue with recruitment once you sort of are able to broadcast this message a little bit louder. Yeah, there's a lot of people in the world who are only utilizing just fractions of their potential. Yeah.
How do you think we can broadcast it louder? Like, I'm asking, man.
Well, so there is a potential issue in that sort of the wider you broadcast things, the more you're going to be getting people who are engaged in like political fantasy. Like, so the way that like marketing works is it's not necessarily things that people get attached to. It's the participation in a narrative is really what people are sold on. And so the way, like, there's a lot of different angles that OSE could take, and it could have a lot of appeal to people who are viewing the world very differently, and that there's like a tremendous potential for collaboration across differences. And so, like, the way that you choose to broadcast the message, there's a danger of sort of pigeonholing yourself into certain like like say the libertarian types or like the leftist types.
Uh-huh.
There's definitely going to be like the far right types that are also very attracted to this. But like sort of, I don't exactly know how you would tap into the things that are sort of animating those sort of areas of political thought without getting like extremists or people who are just like totally ideologically possessed. But there's, the stories are there that, this is an answer to. Like the way that the thing that is sold is like a version of the future where you're not experiencing a problem that you're currently experiencing. And I don't know, like the particular stories that are chosen to sort of be like to sort of show that this is what is being done. I don't know. You could if it's done poorly, you're going to get a lot of political extremists, and I'm not exactly sure specifically how to handle that. But, but yeah.
So what attracts? Tell me more about what do you mean by ideologically possessed, meaning extremists,
Mhm.
but what if they're ideologically possessed? Am I ideologically possessed? I mean, I don't look at it that way. I mean, it's. I would say it's radical. My perspective would be radical.
Mhm.
It's inclusive. It's inclusive and based on a growth mindset.
Yeah, I feel like the place that I would draw the line, maybe so to speak, a, a lot of the issues that I've noticed in the way people think about things and like politics and whatnot is that people fail to see the difference between resisting evil and doing good. You're like those are two very different things, but they kind of sound similar. And the issue is that like if you go all the way in on doing one of them, you end up neglecting the other. Like you end up doing it just as little as you can get away with. And so like there's a lot of people who sort of view themselves as these like great moral champions, but nobody's actually doing anything, you know,
Who would you say is one of those people?
who are not doing good, who are like mainly resisting evil.
The moral champions, people who think they are moral, like the. Are you talking about like some of the environmentalists who think that they're holy?
No, not necessarily. I feel like the world of environmentalism, there's a focus on doing good. Like the way forward is sort of clear, but I don't know. It's like just a general like people who are very invested in like political discourse. I feel like they generally fail to see the difference between like resisting evil and the doing of good. Like that's just sort of like there's a lot of energy that's being put into potentially solving problems, but it's just totally unproductive. Like nobody's doing anything. I feel like if people are yes,
So what about the people that are doing good? Are you
yes,
saying also that they're forgetting about the fact that there's actual evil, so they're kind of like they're not realistic about what they're doing? Is that what you're implying there, or
not necessarily.
but maybe so maybe tell me your point about are you saying that if you don't have a clear distinction between resisting evil and doing good, you're extreme on either end of that, and therefore are ineffective in a bigger picture of things? Or what is your point about the distinction?
Mhm. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly. I may have articulated sort of. I don't know how I would necessarily define an overinvestment in like political discourse. And I may have yeah, I may just be articulating myself quite poorly because I don't think that you know yeah I don't know I may have reached the end of my ability to articulate myself.
Okay, but
Um,
let's see what we. No, I mean let's keep pumping this topic of
mhm,
because you're absolutely right about the kind of response you might get. People who are well, our issue has been to expose this to the world is that there's a lot of ideologically driven people, but typically
mhm,
for us, it's been that people do not have the skills or
yes.
endurance, the grit, the just like Edison talks about 1% inspiration. There's people who have that 1% inspiration, but not the 99% perspiration, the true grit and efforts to get there. Or people are just missing the skill sets, mindsets. So, and that's the reason why we're starting this program, because we're saying, okay, so we need to reinvent the very skill sets of an integrated civilization that has a hope of surviving in the long term.
Yes.
Because we are so incomplete. So if we can admit that, we can then take on a lifestyle of growth and so forth. But that's the big deal. Of course, a lot of ideologues, idealistic people who just love the idea, but no, they don't want to do the work. That's been a definite issue for us quite a bit. And in this apprenticeship and a fellowship, we're trying to select for people that, I mean, first of all, by turning this into 4 years, this means, okay, you're getting into some serious commitment.
Yes.
There are some significant requirements. So somebody who's just ideological about it, they're not going to put in 4 years of their life to work hard on that, you know? So,
Yeah, I feel like maybe another sort of like feature of what I'm trying to talk about is that there's a lot of people who exist only in like these incredibly long-term goals. And really, like, if you're actually building something, you have to spend so much of your time on like the immediate term goals. And that those long-term goals, they're sort of gratifying to think about, like they're kind of fun to think about, and people sort of get like sucked into that without ever sort of having like an actual plan to get there.
Yeah. That's just that's what I would call just being a plain idealist without execution. And the execution part is something that colleges are not good at. I could call myself that. Like I think in my own life and evolution in this project, it was that I saw a very distinct point where there was a distinction between vision and execution.
Yes.
I said,
Yes.
this was all vision, but now let's turn serious about execution. So
Yes. Yes.
It's serious about execution and
Yes.
realistic to what that entails.
Yeah, there was also, I had mentioned this in the video, the first video that I had said, but there was also a considerable factor as to why I chose to do the Appalachian Trail, and that I was just incredibly frustrated with like my inability to execute on things, and that I would have like an idea or something and end up just abandoning these projects like when they were sort of halfway done or whatever, often not even that far. And like I wanted like an incredibly difficult goal that had a clear beginning and end, just like as an execution or as an exercise in driving something all the way to completion, like where something is done. You know, it's not like where there's a clear point at which, okay, I've executed on this goal. Like just so that I could sort of build strength in those muscles of, you know, actually doing things. That was a considerable part of the motivation in doing that.
Yeah. How long ago have you found out about OSC?
To be truthful, I don't know. I had found out about it not actually through the TED Talk or the YouTube or anything. I was looking into a particular piece of technology and just found a wiki page on it on OSC. And I've been going around. I've been browsing the website for, I don't know, probably about a month or so before I'd ever seen the TED Talk or anything like that. It was, for a long time, it was just like, this is a wealth of like technical knowledge that
Cool.
it was fun to sort of pick through.
Do you remember what that was?
It was, I believe it had to do with, and I don't exactly remember, but I think it had to do with plastics hydrolysis. At least at the time, there wasn't a lot of information about that. And I was like, thinking like, okay, can you just break plastic down into fuel again? There was some information about that. Now you can get machines to run off of it.
Interesting. Did you ever run into, are you numeric to the point that I put up a lot of different little back of the envelope calculations there for basic feasibility. Do you ever get into any of that? Or
no, I don't believe so.
You haven't really seen any of that? Yeah. I like doing that because actually, numeracy is a big topic in our program because if you understand numbers, it's like do you know how to count? I mean, counting is it's serious business. Like they say, you got to know how to read and know how to count, right? But
Yes.
counting is it's really about understanding. Like if we talk about possibility, you have to be able to count it. Like otherwise, you're just dreaming, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the
Yes.
approach. So we put significant attention on it. In terms of so the goal for the 4 years is the way I look at it to frame it. There's a cohort of 24, and in it we get to open source the next in line. We've got the house fully done, like 100. You can call it 100% because it's for sale. Okay.
Yes.
There's no other machine that's you can call maybe the 3D printer is like that. You can say we have sold those before as kits, but it's not really enterprise ready. It, I
Yes.
believe that the house is just the best example because the optimization has occurred to the point where, man, if anybody were to study it, it's enterprise time. For the printer, yeah, pretty much, it's pretty close to that. But as a result of the 4 years, we get to all together choose. Okay, what's the next most important thing that's related to housing because we're building housing. What is the next thing that we open source? So we get to knock off machine number 2, whichever that is. So that's kind of the rough goal. So what do you think about the idea of doing basically a collaborative project that where our thesis is, hey, let's 24 of us get together on this and we productize. Is that
Hmm.
appealing to you?
Oh yes. Yeah. The sort of like the way that the ball is carried from ideation to execution, as we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be competent in that entire spectrum of activity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would definitely be. What machine do you think it would end up being, if I may
Well, it's
ask?
something we gotta have the tractor ready for production.
Yes. Yes.
That
Those.
it could be well, but the tractor is also a pretty ambitious thing because right now we're looking at headless tractors, i.e., so it's remote control and AI stuff, like integrating
Mm.
all of that. We've got the hydraulics and mechanics down, but we're going to go in the direction of the automation, as in delivering the kind of making life easier thing that we talk about. Because then you can talk about, okay, here's precision agriculture automated. Now you can actually grow your food for like no, even on slow solar operation, meaning
Hmm.
even PV panels during the daytime and slow moving machines can do that. So, okay, here you're talking about like zero energy and it's automated to do your agriculture or your construction. We're doing materials handling or doing even things like automated grading of the foundation, like that kind of stuff. So you
Hmm.
just 3D scan with your drones for your landscape, put it into FreeCAD, generate tool paths, and then motion paths for the tractor, and you do that in this way. It's far out to it's a
Hmm.
far out thing, but it's with current technology that's just a no brainer if we can integrate it
Yes.
properly. It's a bunch of building blocks that stack onto each other. Like okay, here's you're gonna have to have the positioning system like RTK, GPS, motion motion positioning using global positioning systems. Then you're talking about okay, here's the plane mechanics, here's integration with whatever all the elements that are involved in that, from mechanical to software
Hmm.
to actual use case of what you're doing with it. We're talking okay, we're going to make life easy for people so that we can thrive and do what's most important. Like most people are, you know, doing what they have to survive, but really to enable a better quality of life for everybody. So
Yes.
being serious about, I mean, that's a big project where right now the way things are going, it's not clear whether something like that would emerge, right? Because of the way the capital works, that it's not happening right now. Like
Yes. Yes.
so we have to get involved in it. Okay, in the I want to just tell you the brief story of how I would envision the growth. So we got a cohort of 24. As soon as we get this first one going, we're going to be on continuous recruiting. So to build up to as much as we can as soon as possible. So
Yes.
then at a 240 scale, we're talking about the idea that, okay, the new cohorts are collaborating with us. We learn to collaborate on a 240 person scale. So at
Hmm.
that point, um, think of perhaps each cohort as developing a new machine. So 50, like I nominally think of 50 cohorts and then we're done with the GBCS.
Mhm.
So I still, the promise was the GBCS. It's not delivered yet, and it's much harder than we thought, and it takes much more money and and resources and coordination than we thought. But it's happening. It's going to happen, and the way we can do it is that with the bootstrap funding and just growing the cohorts, because the amount of effort required per product is like $1 million.
Mhm.
An equivalent. That's a rough figure, but therefore you're talking $50 million to deploy this thing, right? So, but let's do it, and we're scaling the numbers of cohorts, and then after that, after the GBCS, that's a real enabler for a lot of this transformative leapfrogging. If you're talking about, oh, now we can make perhaps even engines and
Mhm.
all these different tools that are included, making your steel and concrete or whatever. So that's the idea. But in terms of this bigger package, what we envision is here's you've got a campuses nominally would be like 240. So that's why I envision happening here in Maysville, a campus of 240, 10 cohorts or so. Uh, our town here is 1,000 people, so it's like by that time we're taking over the town almost. Um, but at the point where we have that level of operation for a nominal campus, like a small, like a village scale, then we can start replicating. So the enterprise track, which you're getting onto, would be pretty much you learn enough to run crews, and then what do you see yourself doing in 4 years? Is my question to you. How do you see this? I mean, I could talk forever, and it gets into a lot of detail about how do we deploy from this thing to actually scaling to transform the world. I mean, this is all that we're
Mhm.
talking about in the program. But the brief overview is the cohort idea, where that has its built-in robust economics. If that succeeds, that can replicate wildly. You know,
Yes.
at the point we have the 24, you can wildly replicate to 10x that. And so it's a question of, okay, how quickly can we organize that, build infrastructure, and so forth. And then how quickly can we go from an entity of about 240 and start replicating to other locations. And that's kind of how I see it, to a large number of these things worldwide. And
Mhm.
actually, if I count, so I like counting things, and my count is 100,000 actually. So each one of these, which is nominally absolute minimum of 240 trained agents. So this you're talking about powerful people who get to my skill set in 12 years. So my promise to the world is you can do whatever I do right now in 12 years of training. That's kind of how I look at it.
Mhm.
And with uh, just for the big picture view, we're talking about a realistic possibility anywhere on Earth that has access to open economic development, all the stuff we talk about, which gets into the question: well, what is an open source economy? Those are all questions to be explored. But just a number of 100,000, so that people don't freak out or kind of wrap their head around this concept is, well, at that point, first of all, like, is it possible? Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's more than McDonald's. McDonald's only has 40,000 joints, but with 100,000, imagine us in Maysville serving the local community around. Well, 100,000 people is like within. We have 100,000 people within like probably like a 20-mile radius or something like
Mhm.
that. So it's like that's easy to see that, okay, we can, with our products and services and learning, teaching, the idea that we're producing a lot of the things that the economy produces, basically reinventing an economy,
Yes.
serving like nominally 100,000 people. So that's why I say like 100,000 squared gets you 10 billion. But that's the entire human population. That's kind of like the big picture of it. And the
Yes.
question is,
Yes.
okay, so we got our first cohort of 24. How do we get there? How do we get that collaborative alignment for people? Because that's what I just described to you is impossible without what I would call collaborative stakeholdership.
Mhm.
Meaning that you really learn the idea that, hey, if we work together, we can actually get there to, as a byproduct, fix all the world's problems. Hey, that's a good
Yes.
prize to aim for. But I want to hear your feedback on this. What do you like? Where would you see yourself, like, based on what you've seen and what I'm describing right now, if you're taking on this, so you're interested in the enterprise track, what do you see this evolving in? Or what do you see yourself doing in 4 years? Or yeah.
And I don't want to be overly bold in sort of how far I see things going.
Oh,
but I mean, there's like the actual deployment of the resources that are had by the world right now, actually deploying them well. There's absolutely just not a single thing that doesn't change. You know, like as dramatic of a change as the Industrial Revolution is going to be needed again. You know, like I would like to be something akin to like the founding fathers. You know, like there's going to need to be a group of people who figure these things out and call the play. Like that's just necessary. Like I mean, maybe it's like manically overambitious, but I do want to be at that like highest level of things and like creating a new future. Like there's like I don't know why. Like it's always been somewhat intuitive to me that things are just simply not at all the way they should be. That like there's human possibility that is just not being touched at all, and it's just not even in the realm of most people. Like most people just don't even consider it, but it's there, you know. And like, and I like this is. I mean, I've spent like probably forever thinking about this, and like I want to be in that sort of core group of people who really call the play going forward and do it well.
But how do you not run into the risk of that core being turning evil or becoming a tyrant?
Yeah, I don't know. That's simply a serious problem. I mean, I've thought a lot about like the nature of power and whatnot, and why it can be corrupting. Yeah, I don't know exactly, you know, like upon which fixture it can be attached that there's like a safeguard against that. I think it's just, you know, taking very, very seriously one's duties is, again, I don't know, but I feel like you know, a lot of my life, there's a lot of different things that can ruin people's lives and disaffect people. And I've had like just enough of a taste of many of those different things without ever sort of having my ankle grabbed and had my head pulled under and not been able to get out of it. You know, like I've had a very serious degree of empathy that's been engendered through that. I don't know. I feel like.
Well, but let's poke at it more specific. So, say you've got resources, you've got wealth, you've got money.
Yes.
How would you respond to that, or like, what's the safeguard from you just becoming a tyrant or trying to rule over other people versus doing good? I mean, is it intention enough? Do you have that intention, or would you be corrupted just because you have money, because you don't have enough direction to say, oh, I'm actually going to do it for good, use it in good ways, not evil? I mean, tell me more about that. Where do you see it?
Well, I mean, I guess in some sense I can't be entirely certain that I wouldn't. You know, like that there is a certain level of caution that one needs to have towards oneself. Yeah, like I definitely, it's not something that I can like fully promise that if I were just sort of in this fantasy world, given all the money in the world, that I wouldn't go evil. I can't know that for a fact in any way. But I don't know. That could be the case. I don't think it would be, of course. But
yeah. No. What do you think about? Okay, so then it has to start with values. So what values are driving you? What is core to you? So maybe.
You know, I think something that's quite core to me is that the dignity and worth of the human being is innate, and I very much feel that such a like that is a radical thing to say. Like that is a radical belief to hold, and it's generally, well, it's not quite viewed consistently. That's something that you could say at like a dinner party and everybody nods their heads and agrees with you, but it has like crazy implications. Like there's crazy implications that like everybody has worth, like. But I do very much believe that to be the case. I feel that, in everybody's sort of course, there's things that get in the way of people becoming who they actually are, but that everybody would have the potential to tell you something about God like only they could tell you, like in their best form. That like everybody has dignity, everybody has worth, and that it is core to their own personhood, that it's not something that is externally given to them. I don't know if there's anything that I don't know if there's any way to...
So what would be some of the implications immediately that you could see? Okay, so each person has inherent worth. What would that immediately change right now, for example? Quick example for us.
Oh man, just look at the issue of homelessness. That there's that like the value of these people is greater than the value of the resources that it would take to furnish them with dignity. That's just like immediately that there's, something is morally imperative to be done about this. In this absolute instance, something needs to be done. Like, this is just not acceptable that these things are going on.
Yeah. As we go forward in this mission, so how do you think, like say you're at the OSE
Yes.
first cohort, the founding cohort, how does the community help you to keep on track? Or how do you, I've expressed a vision, the messaging from OSE expresses a certain vision of optimism and positivity by inclusion, open collaboration, and all that. How, maybe the more specific question is, how do we hold each other accountable towards going in that open collaborative direction? Because that's kind of like would be the answer to, okay, that's the answer to saying we're going in the good direction versus we're turning evil, let's say. Right?
I don't know exactly the mechanism through which. It's definitely the answer of community that like we sort of, that existing alone is almost not existing at all. That that's the way people are meant to be, and like it is only like really within the context of a community that you can actually become like a fully developed human being. That if you're sort of totally atomized from others, there's no way to not be underdeveloped as a person. And the exact mechanism through which that happens, I'm not entirely sure at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about so in the enterprise track, what do you
Yes.
where do you see that going for you?
In terms of like running crews, or sort of like a longer term vision of producing things which are able to stand on their own feet.
In that track?
I don't know. Maybe it's a level of innate ambition that anytime that there is like a higher level of participating in something, I'm generally drawn to it. I also like there are things that at present I just don't really have the ability to prototype and experiment, but there are things that I would very much like to build that I see as being necessary. I enjoy very much science and engineering, and throughout the course of that, there's been plenty of. Again, most of them are probably not even possible, and that I haven't tested them. But there's a good variety of machines that I would like to make and deploy that I think could make a real difference in people's lives. And
such as what kind of things are you talking about?
oh man, so I really like wastewater treatment. I think that it's a generally underserved thing. But it's actually like a global issue. Like for the same reason that, for example, say that you're like a talented young doctor and you need to specialize. It's a lot more attractive to be a brain surgeon than like a GI doctor. Like a lot of people don't want to make stool their business. So it's generally an underserved thing, but it's very necessary. And I mean, I've had this again. Like this could be totally not possible, in that I don't have like anything real to show for it. Like I haven't built anything or tested it. But there's the method of sewage treatment of thermal hydrolysis that is by far the best way to treat sewage. And right now it's done by just like blasting the sewage with steam and heating it up a lot. That breaks it down to where it's more digestible by methanogenic bacteria, and it makes a very high quality fertilizer at the end of the process. I would like to see if that could be done through very brisient pulsed detonation, where like you're performing that change in the sewage just in the wave front or just in the shock front that's moving through it, rather than bringing the entire thing to boil and blasting it with steam. Like seeing if you could get, because it's very energy intensive, the thermal hydrolysis process, so it's only done on very large scale. Seeing if that the scale at which that process could be done could be made more local. That's very much something that I would like to do.
Have you looked at, so why is, for example, why are current methods inadequate, or where do you see like the big, like for example, just biodigesters, for example?
They're not nearly as efficient as sewage, which has gone through the process of thermal hydrolysis. There's a lot of energy extraction that is being left on the table, and that you're breaking things down to such a degree that you can, again, I forgot the exact number of it, but like it's just like night and day how much you can digest the sewage with the bacteria. Like it's just so much more efficient, and you get a better quality fertilizer at the end of the process.
Mm-hmm. So when you studied that you studied that just independently and all that. How
yes.
So I'm seeing some technical content in there. What did you take a lot of science in high school, or?
Not really. No, I found that a lot of like the advanced tracks in high school, I had taken them originally, but I found that they were just like a more trifling version of the core tracks. Like there actually wasn't like a real like increase in the quality of knowledge that you were getting. They just made it more difficult. So like definitely my knowledge in science and whatnot, it's definitely considerably underdeveloped. But no, I did not take a very large amount of I did take a lot of science tracks in high school. Yeah, I did receive a very unusual education in elementary school that has absolutely changed my life. So the program, it was the advanced program when I was in elementary school. It was very unusual. I haven't ever heard or met anybody who received this education, but it was the woman who taught it. She was incredibly smart, and she was incredibly inspired and driven. And she took this very unusual approach to education, in that she was able to teach. It was very small classes, and the way that she structured the entire year is she would choose this very broad topic and teach everything about it. So, like one year it was wastewater treatment, and so like when I was in like third grade, she taught us everything about wastewater treatment from.
Was this public school, or was
this? Yes. This was at public school. Yes, it was very unusual. No, I haven't met anybody who's had a similar education to this in public school. But she would teach us like the chemistry behind it, the history of governments behind it as to how these things are able to be done. She would teach us, the economics as to how these things are done. At the end of the year, we took a field trip to a water treatment facility. It was just like this incredibly broad approach to education. And she would.
Is there a name for this?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's fascinating, because that's actually how I think about. Did I make up a name for it? I thought about a style exactly like the way we are gonna teach here is quite similar to that.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
like this one topic, but just look at it from so many angles.
Yes.
Including like, okay, there's the history of that, there's the sociology, there's the science of it, there's the math of it.
Mm.
and all that.
Even like the biology of it, like in terms of like that was a huge part of that year. I remember of like what is in our feces is something that she was teaching. But sorry to
Yeah, but
interrupt,
how?
but
But that's one aspect of it. You do it from many angles,
yes,
including how it relates to everything else.
yes, yes,
Right? That's the important part because that's when you can start tapping genius because that's where you can start seeing that if you study this core and then another core, well, first of all, it's going to be knowing one entire core is going to be much faster to learn another,
yes.
and you just form ways of thinking that just turn you into the natural potential that you do have.
Yes,
Mm.
yeah, her education
Mm.
like completely rewired my brain
Wow.
entirely. I would credit like anything like any increase of mental acumen that I have. It is entirely, I believe, her. Like that. And this is going to sound dramatic. This is going to sound like a hyperbole, but I actually never learned hardly anything in middle school or high school that she didn't already teach me there. Like
Wow.
she had us doing like when we were in like third and second grade, doing like relatively advanced algebra. Like she just thought that like okay, like she had a different idea as to what children were capable of doing if they were taught correctly,
Wow.
and she pulled it off. Like she was incredible. She
So are
was.
you in contact with this person?
No, I'd never been able to find her online. I had it's been a while since I've tried to find her, but no, I haven't found her.
Fascinating. What was the? Do you know what the experience of the other kids in that class were?
All very similar. My sister went through the same program as well, and it's quite similar.
They
Yeah,
found it
everybody,
just out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, everybody who went through her program
Wow.
definitely was quite changed by it. And I even remember though, like on the in the by the time that my brother had went through school, she ended up receiving like administrative pressure to change the way she was teaching, and so mainly because she was again, I don't know how she ever got the ball rolling on being able to teach like that,
Yeah.
but she had very small classes. Like I mean, I just like in remembering the testing that was done, I think it was just like like an IQ test basically. But I know that by the end of at least even by the end of when I was there, she was receiving pressure to have more students in the class. Uh, but yeah,
Hmm. Fascinating story. Um, in the so in the 4 years here, we're gonna also as time goes on. So we're gonna develop basically like the grad level and the PhD level. I envision a 12-year
yes,
program. Um, would you see yourself doing like the more advanced track where okay, so
yes,
yeah, the first 4 years is designed so you can pretty much learn how to design and build just about anything. I mean, we're gonna spend as much time. And it depends on the people who we get, like, and my ability and how many good teachers we can
yeah,
recruit and all of that. How far we get, how effective, how effective we call it. We're creating a world of a world of education. Um, but the idea that there's learn how to design and build just about anything. Learn the architectures, the core architectures. What are the systems that we're living in terms of civilization, both your technosphere and then you've got organizations and institutions. How do these work, and what are their faults, and how can we improve them? But then in the next 4 years, it's about so the first 4 years, it's like you're building homes. The next 4 years, it's you're getting ready to pretty much. It's like getting prepared to build a campus. Like at the end of the 12 years is where we're going to say, hey, you're ready to basically build a prototype civilization elsewhere. One of the replications. Um, and we'll see if how it evolves in terms of that kind of a time frame. But if you think about okay, there's 12 years where you learn everything about so-called everything about everything. You should be able to take on a civilization kind of a startup experiment. So that's how we're framing it. But literally,
yes,
we want all the people coming out of this program to do great work and take this to other locations. So we're literally functioning as points of light for anywhere else by creating an open economy. And that becomes the question: open society, open economy. So Soros talks about open society. I think that word has to be really qualified to open collaborative society. There's a
Yes.
distinction there, and I actually have some articles on the wiki about that. Um, so read those to discuss later, or they're going to be taught in school.
Mhm.
But the idea there is, losing my train of thought. What's the point I wanted to make? I don't know what point is. Oh, no, simple. Okay, talking about aiming at the. Okay, George Soros talks about open society. Yeah, good. Democratic institutions. There's critiques of open society as well. I mean, like, hey, if everybody can think openly, we're gonna have too much diverse opinion. We're not gonna be able to get along. Let's get an authoritarian in here. Show us the way. There's critiques, and they're worth listening to because I mean they're right. Both sides have valid points. But what does an open source society that we envision look like? What do you say right now as far as what you've read about, what you thought about in terms of open source? And if I were to say, because I have to be very clear about this, what is the open source economy? What do I say?
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the open source economy? Have you thought a lot about what that topic means?
Yeah, I see it largely. Well, something that we've had in other areas. Think of like the academic development of mathematics
Mm-hmm.
and how people have been able to be working on something, and then that work is taken by somebody else and used in ways that the original person never would have even been able to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
That like if everybody was just starting from square one, we get nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, in the largest version of it, I see it as the fact that I want to live in a world that has things that are beautiful enough that they took more than one lifetime to build.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but but yes, it's sort of like the type of collaboration that has enabled the development of things like mathematics
Mm-hmm.
being brought everywhere else. Being brought into everything. That
Yeah.
sort of just like hoarding one's knowledge is like knowledge is the rising tide that floats all boats. Like that's actually what it is. But
So
like,
what if somebody asks you, so does this exist today? Like, well, doesn't this happen? Or, knowledge is kind of
oh,
open. What do you say to somebody that asks you, well, doesn't this exist already?
I mean, it exists in limited places. It's not fully developed or fully deployed. It's there are certain things where people collaborate openly. Like again, like the example of mathematics, but things such as like a lot of technology is siloed into proprietary design. Like that is in the same way that like advancements in mathematics have enabled us to do incredible things that
Mm-hmm.
we're being restrained in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Like these things that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. There are things right now that could be possible if we had
Right.
had these principles of open collaboration.
Can you point to why, say, the other areas where there's not so much openness, why that is so critical? Like, so why is it so critical that, oh, well, the economy's not open, companies have trade secrets and all. So why is that so critical? If you were to explain that to somebody.
I mean, it's because we have the ability to solve serious problems. Like right now, if you took the wealth of a single grocery store and just plopped it somewhere in the Bronze Age, there would be barbarians coming over every hill to take everything. Like there are issues that can be solved in serious ways. And there are issues right now that we have that could just simply be solved. That we could go on. We could move on to other issues that you and I probably don't even know. We couldn't even imagine them.
Yeah.
Like that, there are possibilities of human potential that just we really could not imagine right now.
Yeah.
If we're not able to reach that sort of wings leading edge of what it is that people can do,
Yeah.
if we're being held back in things, that
Yeah.
I would say that's why.
Technically, I would define the open source economy as its two main things would be when I'm thinking about it, okay, well, yeah, obviously open collaboration, there's unleashing of productive power to solve poverty and war and things like that.
Mhm.
of course requires some personal evolution away from the scarcity mindset.
Yes,
But
yes.
but if you talk about just some technical aspects of it, that'll be the zero marginal cost society and universal basic assets.
Yes, yes.
A world. So I think these two things can be, in some way, they're almost inevitable for the future evolution of humanity. So what are these things? So zero marginal cost society, that things, because the technology is so immense, so powerful, and energy so abundant, as in the abundant energy that comes from the sun, that to produce anything, which is knowledge and resources, but what are resources? Resources are called rocks, plants, sunlight, soil, and water plus energy. That's all the resources, technology. If you have energy, you've got resources processed into advanced technology. So it should in principle be low cost to survive. That's the zero marginal cost society idea. That's Jeremy Rifkin, right? He wrote the book called Zero Marginal Cost Society. You heard of that book? No?
I have not actually. No, I've not read
But
it.
you knew what the zero marginal cost society concept, zero marginal cost
I
society
mean, I think
was?
I can imagine that it's like not allowing rent-seeking behavior into like the most core elements of life. You know,
Yeah.
that can sort of.
Simply that costs go down because technology and energy allows us to be so. And it's like if you can automate things, if you can liberate things, survival should not be a pressure, which it is right now. It's one of the biggest
Oh yes, yes.
terrors in society. It's a huge thing. So that's the zero marginal cost. Yeah, we were actually mentioned in that book, I believe, that the zero
Oh,
marginal cost
nice,
society OSC was mentioned.
nice.
And universal basic assets is the idea that, okay, well, that's more like what you said about critical assets should be widely accessible, like housing. We shouldn't be the housing, like houses are not homes, they're investments. It's like they're expensive or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you, sorry to interrupt, but like I mean, if you, it's like say a hurricane comes and they buy up all the generators and increase the price. It's obvious that that's an awful thing to do. But if you do that with housing, you're an investor. Like it's just like what's going on here? What's happening?
There you
Uh,
go. But in terms of implementation, so for the open source economy, you're collaborating openly. Concept of patents and trade secrets kind of go away. There's mutually assured abundance everywhere. Universal basic assets. A lot of people are talking about universal basic assets or income. A lot of people are talking about more about the income, but I think the more essential way to do it is the assets, where you
yes.
enable productive infrastructures that let you do that in a generative way, not that you're just handing out money which has been stolen from someone in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. The income, the universal basic income angle is very incomplete in a certain sense, and that like sort of the promise of capitalism of competition on the side of options for workers is really only going to be charged, if you will, if you have the option to break away from the system entirely. Like if you just sort of like if you have to work, like if you have to be in these like siloed into these existing systems, then they can basically have like trusts as they are related to like how well workers ought to be treated. Like unless you can break away, they have no incentive to actually be competitive in the realm of what can be done for like common working people. So like just giving people money, like that's just not the right strata of change. It has to be like access to doing the work communally for what is required to live. It's
How did you arrive at the concept? Because you mentioned about it's all made up. People created things.
yes.
How'd you end up on a clarity on that? Therefore everything is negotiable and redesignable. How'd you come up with that? What experiences
I don't.
to that conclusion?
I mean, I think it's always having a tremendous interest in history. Like I absolutely love history. And seeing that we're very much in a Newton's cradle, where the impetus has been things that people have done, It's like, no, I'm a person, like I have the capacity to do things. I don't know why. I don't know why it's sort of always been like relatively visible to me that that's the way things are. And I mentioned like the Steve Jobs video where he's talking about everything around us being, the product of invention, but it was definitely, that's a good way to introduce somebody to that idea. But I don't know why it's always been like quite visible to me that these are these things. A lot of that which is influencing my life is not a fixture of reality per se. It's decisions that have been made, and I don't know how I arrived to it exactly, but it's definitely something that I've seen for quite a long time.
Yeah, thinking about being an independent thinker. Do you consider yourself an independent thinker?
Yeah, I'd say so.
How do you think you? Well, I would say by the way you speak and your notions, yes, you are an independent thinker. And how do you think can you trace that back to how you arrived at that kind of a mindset, or did you have any formative experiences where you were your mind was opened in some way, or to see that? Okay, well.
I mean,
to think critically.
In truth, a lot of it was that education that I'd received in elementary school. Yeah, it was actually the whole of elementary school. I had her. The way the class was structured is 1 day a week. You did not go to the normal class. You went to her class, and it was 1 day a week from first grade to fifth grade that I was taught by her. But yeah, I mean,
was that class called like special enrichment, like during those, because you called it your regular classes and then you have this special class?
Yeah, it was under like at least like legally it was under the category of special education. The word that was used was target. I don't know why that was the word that was chosen. There was so yes, it was that education.
We should find out more about this because that sounds like holy cow. We could inject this into any school we could change.
Yeah. That was I mean, there's really just the way that she taught it. Like, there's really not been a single element of my life that's been untouched by that. And then really a lot of it's been, a considerable amount of it has been that after that, everything else has failed to deliver. Like there was this real like living like truly like she really instilled us with this understanding of like the value of like principled pursuit of knowledge. Like it was very real. It was very real. And then after that, it's like the rest of the world's been like, oh, actually, no, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter anymore. It's just been a lot of what has sort of driven like any development that I've had mentally has been trying to resolve that tension that actually, no, I do think these things still matter, and I want them to matter to other people too. I want to make something where these ideals aren't getting smothered, because.
So, and you're referring to what specific? So you said she taught you a lot about how to think.
Yes.
But what other ideals? Like, did she teach ethical values and other things? Like.
Oh yes. She was giving us like things like sort of classical ethical dilemmas and sort of these very open discussions, like as a class, sort of talking about these things. Yeah, there's definitely like a considerable sort of philosophic element to things, as well as it was majority science. That was the majority of it. There wasn't really too much like art or literature that happened there. Although I did, again, in another somewhat unusual way, my mother and my grandmother were absolutely horrified by the quality of public education that I was receiving in respects to literature and art, and that these were things that they had a great value of. So, ever since I was very young, my mother spent a considerable amount of time with me, sort of nurturing an appreciation for beauty, and that's something that a lot of people just never receive. And
how did she do that?
Now just reading actual like a lot of what. Like a lot of the things that like children read in school is just garbage. Like, it's just not good. And she exposed me to literature that she liked that had an impact on her. From a very young age, she had done that.
Yeah.
And also going to museums and whatnot, going to ballets, going to the opera whenever we could, symphonies, things such as that. That it was a because these things aren't actually separate from science in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That the like a tremendous thing that holds us back right now is people's ability to even conceive of what the future could be like, and that's sort of the business of that which is conceptual for people is the business of the artist. That like scientists can throw as much information at the public as they want, but unless people even have the scaffolding to process that, it doesn't mean anything. And like the the capacity for art for shaping the future is just as critical.
Hmm.
It's these aren't really separate things. And also, in the business of doing science, art isn't necessarily separate. It's not like when you do science that you're just sort of like cranking a slot machine and a random piece of truth comes out. Your conceptual suite is very much at play there. Like every now and again, you see some like goofy articles saying like quantum physics proves Plato right or something, but it's not like we're very much still in this Newton's cradle where even if we've forgotten about these original ideals, they're still very much affecting us. We still have this preferential gradient for what kinds of things we're going to discover, and that it is sort of the business of the artist. And I do think it's like a real channeling of other forces that exist outside of the artist that determine the space of our conceptual suite. Like that is
Mm-hmm.
something that they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Fascinating. So we could probably talk for much longer, but let's wrap it
All
up
right.
here. And so the next things would be getting ready for the practical exam. There's a
Yes.
site interview, which is the next steps, which is the building of the module and the swarm build on the site here. Um, would August? So we're thinking now. So we're kind of shifting the schedules around, but September 1 would be start date. Does that work for you?
Yes. 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 That does.
And how does, let's see, August 1 for the actual
Uh,
on-site thing. Let's
August
see,
1st for on site.
July, August 1, that's a Friday. Maybe make it a Saturday, probably like August 2nd or something. Yeah, call it that. So we're gonna get ready for that. Um, how much of the instructions regarding the module build were there in the application there already? Did you?
There was not. I didn't see too much in terms of the specifics of what was to
Yeah,
be
no
built.
specifics, but it just basically describe the exercise. So we'll move on to that step, and otherwise, um, in the meantime, do you have any practical suggestions on because
Yes.
finding more good people? Do you know any people who might be interested in this or have specific
Um.
suggestions on where we should look? So I mean, we're posting on job boards everywhere, getting
Mhm.
things out into magazines and different places. A lot of job boards and counselors from high schools,
Mm.
try and catch the people who are just getting out of high school. Um, Beyond that, we actually didn't have too much luck on say typical job posting sites are no, they're kind of too much in the mainstream.
Yeah.
But some of the more like maybe like social change, various more progressive topics. There's job boards specifically dedicated to that, which we're tapping. So
Mm.
there's some good
Mhm.
stuff there.
Nice.
But any suggestions, or if you don't have any now, just keep thinking about it and see if you know any people. But yeah, we want
Yeah. I'll definitely keep
to
that.
recruiting.
I will let you know if anything comes to mind in that regard. For sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, fascinating. It's do you have any other questions at this time or anything like that, or?
No, no, nothing immediately comes to mind right now.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. So let's keep in touch. If I have any
Certainly.
questions, if you have any questions, I mean, drop me an email. So
Absolutely.
I was thinking, oh yeah, and I'll stop recording right here, but let's hold on for a second. So thank you.